All right. Well, got 2 minutes after the hour, so let's get started. So thanks for joining us. It's morning here in Oak Ridge, Tennessee, where Kevin and I are. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening to you, depending on where you're joining us from. Kevin O'Kane and I are going to cover some of the challenges around part shortages and how our programs here at Paragon can help you address those challenges. I'm Ty Smith. I'm the Vice President of Business Development here at Paragon, and I'm joined today by my friend and enthusiastic colleague, Kevin O'Kane. It's his first webinar with us. So Kevin, welcome. Thanks for joining us this morning.
Thank you for having me, Ty.
All right. Well, let's cover just a couple of things. I want to make sure that we have some basic kind of rules of engagement here. So just a quick housekeeping notes. We're going to keep everybody on mute for the duration of the webinar. You will have a Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. So just kind of familiarize yourself with that now. And you can ask questions at any time during the webinar. They get saved in the queue here. So whenever you think of something on a slide or on a particular topic, you don't have to wait to type that in. You can type that in at any time and we'll be able to see it. This webinar is being recorded. We'll send out the link to our YouTube channel after that gets done being uploaded to the platform. And you can share this information with any of your colleagues that you think will find it interesting and helpful. So again, hit that Q&A button if you have any questions while we're going through some of these slides. So our agenda for today is to cover just a variety of topics around the global supply chain crisis. I'll do a brief introduction on who Paragon is, and then we'll go through, what are the current challenges within the global supply chain, some of the best practices that Paragon has in managing our own supply chain. We'll talk in detail about ways that we can mitigate some of those risks using a combination of our programs. And Kevin and I will do a Q&A around those topics to give you a better sense of how all this works and how those processes come together to help you address some of those supply chain challenges. And then finally, of course, we'll have an audience Q&A where you guys can ask questions and we'll answer those live for you during the webinar. So let me just start by a brief introduction of who Paragon is, if this is your first time hearing about us. We're one of the largest non-OEM nuclear-focused businesses in the United States. We've got 220 dedicated people located around the country, but predominantly in our Texas location for Paragon, Texas. Paragon was created from ATC Nuclear in 2017. We became Paragon August 30th, 2017 through a buyout of ATC Nuclear. We then acquired Nuclear Logistics in February of 2020 from AZZ. That approximately doubled the size of our organization. So we're really happy to now been working almost 2 years with our folks and colleagues down in Texas. And it's important to note, as always with a nuclear supplier, that our QA program is audited by NUPIC, by NIAC. We've had DOE and DOD audits as well. And then I'd like to add for our folks from Canada that have joined us, we just successfully completed our N299.1 audits this summer. So we had 2 of those over the summer. We're really proud to be able to supply that 299.1, .2, .3, .4 material to your power plants. On the right-hand side of the slide, you can see our variety of programs. We've got alternate sourcing, custom design, equipment qualification, reverse engineering, CGD, and INC. Today, we're going to be primarily talking about using our programs in alternate sourcing, INC repair, and dedication, and how those programs work together to kind of better address some of these global supply chain issues. So let's look at some of these supply chain issues and what we're seeing, right? So if you listen to the news or you know that there is a big challenge in global supply chains currently. It is across all manner of parts and services, across both food, retail, and is impacting industrial supply chains as well. So we've seen material shortages, cost increases, extensive extensions of transit times, leading to extended lead times, which ultimately for those of us that work in supply chain in nuclear power facilities or at other facilities, that makes it difficult to say when parts are going to be on site. And ultimately, that makes it difficult to know that you're going to have the parts available when you're doing maintenance, and then how that maintenance activity supports operations. So the flow down effects are very real. I've put up a couple of pictures here. You can see that major challenge that we remember from the Suez Canal when that ship got stuck there. That led to a big disruption, one of the first disruptions that I can remember on shipbound traffic. And then at the bottom right-hand side, we've got a lot of, this is a picture of the port of Long Beach and just the extensive wait times to get those ships into port. And then in the middle of the screen, you can see some indication of the inventory levels in the supply chain. This is in days of inventory on, so how many days of inventory you have on site. You can see a huge spike when COVID first hit the world, where demand went down and then people kept producing. So that led to an increase in inventory. And then you could see a significant drop off in inventory as all of the disruptions in labor and then disruptions in supply chain logistics, as that kind of rippled through the supply chain. And now we're at some of the lowest levels of inventory within the last 30 years. So this data stretches back to 1992. So some really significant disruptions that are unique for most of us in our career. So let's talk about some of the ways that Paragon is addressing that, some of our best practices, and we welcome some of your best practices as well in the Q&A session. So one of the things that we think is important to be doing on a regular basis is evaluating risks that are unique to each of our suppliers. We're looking at that both on what kind of products they're providing to us. So are they raw materials versus finished goods? And then what is their location? Are they located 30 minutes down the road from us? Or is it some a procurement that we're making, maybe it's coming out of Southeast Asia and it's typically having to transit the ocean to get to us? And we have to manage those risks differently depending on where those supplies are coming from. Like most of you, we are tracking our suppliers more frequently. We're keeping communication lines open with our key suppliers and encouraging our team to make sure they're talking to the suppliers management team so that we understand what their risks really are. We've increased the level of safety stock for our commonly used components to the extent that we're able to forecast that. A lot of our of the material that we need is bought on a job specific basis. So there's not a lot of common safety stock, but when there is, we're trying to increase the level of it. We're also looking at alternative logistics. So when that supplier has some location risks that we're aware of, we're looking at other ways to bring those parts to Paragon that don't rely on, let's say, a shipping channel across the Pacific Ocean. Can we get it on a plane? If we can get it on a plane, we can get it faster, and we're more assured that we're going to be successful in getting that part. So we're looking at alternative logistics across the business. We're also being highly collaborative with our suppliers and helping them to find parts through our own supply organization. So if we run into a couple of things, like the best example I've got is for some of our medium voltage breaker manufacturing, they were short on some sheet metal, and we happen to have a supplier local to us in Paragon, Texas, that had sheet metal in stock. So we helped connect the two dots there so that we could get the finished goods material that we needed by providing the raw material to our supplier. So look at those opportunities to collaborate on your available suppliers and help your vendors get access to those folks. We're also being proactive about assessing replacement material. So if we know there's some risks to either the product or to the location, we're being proactive with our engineering organization to understand what are the replacement material options, and that's always available to you guys through your procurement engineering organizations. Very busy, so it needs to be a significant risk, but we see that more and more frequently. And then we're also asking for partial shipments as often as they're available. If we can get 10 of a part instead of the full lot of 25, we'll take the 10 and complete as much of the work as we can. Therefore, being able to support our customers with partial shipments in the future. So we look forward to any other ideas that you guys might have around some of these areas to reduce risk in supply chain. So let's talk specifically about some of our programs and how those programs work together to address uncertainty in supply chains. We're going to start with Peaks. Peaks is one of our flagship programs here. Kevin O'Kane has been the manager of that for many years now. I think he's probably on his 8th or 9th year here managing that for us. And Peaks provides parts for inter-utility transfers between different nuclear power plants. So they take parts from one nuclear power plant, send them to another. Peaks also has a network of suppliers that we utilize for sourcing. So these are suppliers that maybe are not registered in your supply chain or in your vendor database. So they're available to us and we can procure those parts and get them on site for you. So what are some of the unique advantages in this uncertain environment from Peaks? Well, I think one of the best advantages is that we know that the parts through Peaks are in a very reliable location. They are at nuclear power plants. Those nuclear power plants don't sell those parts commercially to other folks. So you don't have to worry about them, selling to the public and there being a problem with a run on parts. They're not selling to other industrial channel partners. So you really have very good knowledge and you feel good about where those parts are and that they are available. We can provide those parts within 24 hours. So that's really important for emergent needs. But during this uncertainty in the supply chain, I think it's important to also have that part in the hand level of assurance for planning maintenance and for your planning cycles. So it may no longer be adequate to just tell plant management that the parts scheduled to be here in 2 weeks, scheduled to be here in 4 weeks, because that parts forecasting is so difficult. So now we can provide through Peaks, a 24-hour shipment to your site. You've got that part. Maybe you don't need it for a couple of weeks, but you've got it in hand, and that provides a high level of assurance. Peaks is also a great way to vet alternative solutions for your vendors. So if your vendors come up and tell you that they've got some delays on from their supply chain, you can point them to our website, paragones.com. They can look for parts that may be available for us. And Kevin O'Kane and I will talk through an example of that. But it's open. This website is open to their use, so they can find the parts. They don't need a login or anything like that. They can find the parts that they need. And we have seen a significant increase in inter-utility transfers during the pandemic. So you can see at the bottom right-hand side of the slide, I've shown here some pre-pandemic levels of transactions and transfers. And then you can kind of see there is a step change here in the level of inter-utility transfers after the pandemic started. It increased by about 50 transfers a month, which is quite substantial. That's about a 25% increase pre-pandemic versus post-pandemic. So we have seen that increasing. We're going to continue to see that. Next, let's talk a little bit about a couple of other programs that through Peaks help us address even more challenges. So I also wanted to highlight repair and dedication. So repair and dedication are readily available options when you've got some OEM supply chain issues. Maybe they're lengthening lead times, or they're simply unable to forecast when they can ship. You can utilize repair and dedication options to address that uncertainty. In the case of repair, it can be significantly faster than manufacturing. In many cases, full card repair can be done in less than a week. I've got an example here on the right-hand side of the slide that a card that was repaired, tested, it was burned in and returned to the customer within 72 hours. So very quick turnaround. And our team at Paragon, Texas, where we do all of the INC repair work, they understand the time critical nature of those needs because they're typically dealing with emergent needs at plants. So we're able to understand how to get those parts to you in a very fast way and work with your team to get repair plans approved, make sure we've got the material on hand. We have all those logistics worked out. And then as Kevin O'Kane will provide an example of, we provide full functional testing of components. So if you source an item, let's say we source it from Peaks, but you would like to have that item functionally tested before you take receipt of it from another nuclear power plant, we can do that functional testing in Paragon, Texas. For dedication, it's very similar to INC repair. We can take parts from other nuclear power plants, put them through our dedication process, and provide them with a certificate of conformance, of Part 21 traceability. We'll provide a full Appendix B traceable dedication process for that part. We can even do qualification of parts that are coming from other utilities. That's a little more difficult, to be perfectly honest with you. You need to make sure you've got some equivalent items that have a significant enough quantity that you're able to do qualification. We need to have a qualification sample and then the finished product that will ship to the customer. So we're going to make sure that you have the right number of parts. So again, as a recap here, Peaks provides the ability to do the inter-utility transfers, and then we layer repair and dedication on top of that capability to transfer material from one utility to our facility at Paragon, Texas. We can repair or dedicate those parts as needed, and then provide them back out to the requesting utility, our customer, as either an Appendix B item or a fully repaired and functional tested item. So that gives you some important flexibility in this time of challenge. So with that, I want to provide some different ways that you can contact us. So we've got 5 ways. Kevin O'Kane and I counted them yesterday. There may be more, but we came up with 5. You can call us 24/7, email us 24/7, email us. You're going to hear a response in 15 minutes. You can use the chat feature on our website. So you can see here, I was just yesterday chatting with Jenny Mueller. You have trouble reading her name, but she was chatting back with me yesterday on the website. We've got the Peaks catalog. Again, you can access that at paragones.com. And then the Rapid catalog. If you're a member of the Rapid database, you can send an RFQ to us when you find a part that we're responsible for from the Rapid catalog. And so with that, we're going to come back to this slide so you don't feel rushed to write all of this down right now. But Kevin O'Kane and I are going to talk for just a few minutes about the Peaks process and how all that works. So, all right. So Kevin, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me, Ty.
We're excited to have you here. So, first of all, how's our fall outage season going so far?
Fall outage season is a pretty normal schedule, 27 units planned outages, which is not heavy. The heaviest I remember is 36 one fall.
Yeah.
But the volume is very heavy, and that is due to COVID and the supply chain, like you had said, the supply chain crisis in the country.
Yeah.
But something that we're very proud of. We're getting calls from OEMs now looking for material, for Peaks to get the material from plants to support other nuclear plants. So to us, this is a win-win for plants, right?
Right.
Other plants need material to get jobs done. So the OEMs, we're helping the OEMs support other plants. So when we call one of our plants and say, hey, this is for an OEM, we realize it's not for another plant, but it is for another plant. It's the support.
Yeah, ultimately,
and the support from the plants has been tremendous. They understand, the OEMs are happy, and the end user is happy, and they understand where it's coming from. So it's been very, very good. It's great. We're all in this together. So if we're not, then we're in a lot of trouble.
Well, before we dive too much into some of the process, I'd like to hear a little bit about your team that works behind the scenes here to make all this incredible stuff happen. So, what are the type of people that are on the Peaks team, and what are their backgrounds?
Got a very diversified team, Ty. 4 people with plant experience, 3 former supply chain managers. One of those supply chain managers is a former procurement engineering manager as well. We have another, the 4th person was a materials manager. We have a former customer service representative manager from Curtis Wright. We have 2 application engineers, and we have 2 sourcing people that have been with us since the very beginning that have a tremendous amount of experience.
Yeah, including your wife, Rosemary O'Kane, who always
The sorceress. The sorceress. She can get anything at any time. It's amazing.
Great. Well, talk a little bit about, so when we use those contact methods that we're showing, whether they call or email, use the chat, how does once that initial communication happens, what happens behind the scenes after that?
Okay, I think the best way would be to give you an example, Ty.
Okay.
We get everything funnels into our tracking system, Zendesk, right? So the best example would be last Saturday night, right? When I worked, we got a request from a plant, a customer, and they needed 2 boards safety related, and it was outage related, critical path. They needed it right away. So right away, you look and you see in peaks, you look and see who has it safety related and who's the closest. Sometimes location means everything, right? So we located a plant very close. Well, at first they couldn't release it because it was on QC hold. It got escalated, which we took care of all of the transactions, and they agreed they could release it. So we got the docs. We handled all the transactions to get them the docs. They reviewed the docs. The docs didn't work for their application. So we moved on to another plant. To make a long story short, we went to 4 plants before we could find a plant where the docs worked in their application. 11:30 at night, the docs were acceptable. We got a PO. Paragon peaks. We arranged all the logistics, and they had it by the next morning, and they were extremely happy that they got the material in a timely fashion, and we were very happy to help.
Great.
So the important part of that process is the buyer who was requesting the parts, they moved on to other things. They were in an outage, and we took care of everything. They didn't have to sit and say, okay, let me make a phone call. Okay, let me escalate it. Okay, let me okay that. Everything was handled by Paragon, and it's an advantage for them.
Yeah, it gives them, they don't have to worry about it, right? They know that you're working it. They know, our team's trained to send regular updates, by the hour of the status of things.
Exactly.
They know that you're getting those questions at those nuclear power plants on a regular basis.
Exactly. And even after the transaction's completed and we turn it over to a logistics company, we make sure the logistics company like Airways provides hourly updates to the customer. Hey, it's in Arkansas. Hey, it's in Tennessee. And that's all appreciated. It's important when you're in a plant and you're reporting to the OCC what's going on. That's part of our job, is to make sure our buyers who we're helping can report to the OCC about what is going on.
So walk us through a couple of examples on the alternative supply. So we talked about repair options, dedication options. How does that process work, and how is it different than the normal inter-utility transfers that the Peaks team is typically doing?
Sure. We had a plant, down south, right? Southern plant. They needed a power supply that was on the East Coast. And we located the power supply, we found it, but we knew the age of the power supply was old, the capacitors were old.
Yeah.
So we reached out to our Paragon, Texas facility and communicated with them, and Grand Gulf, we got Grand Gulf and Paragon, Texas talking, and we all agreed, all communication through Zendesk, so everybody was talking all the time, which is very important. There was no sidebar conversations. Everybody was in communication that we would purchase this power supply and send it to Paragon, Texas, to change the capacitors and perform the testing, and then supply the board to the plant that needed the power supply to the plant that needed it. Then in combination, Paragon, Texas already had a power supply that they were working on, and they provided that to the plant that had sold the power supply because it was a critical component and they needed it. So the person who supplied it was happy because they got another one. The person that was needed it was happy because they got one in a very timely fashion. They were offline, they had to have it. And Paragon, Texas, it stepped in and we worked together with them, and it worked out extremely well.
So in that case, the plant doesn't have to waive its requirements for age-sensitive components, or the age of the capacitors, electrolytic capacitors. We take care of that at Paragon, Texas, and they get the part they need to the requirements that they have.
And it was, and the power supply was completely tested, so they know they're getting something that's absolutely perfect.
What about for dedication? Do you have any examples of where
Sure. We get a request for a part, and it could be safety related, that we just really can't locate anything safety related. So what we'll do is we'll locate something commercial grade, and then we will contact Paragon, Texas, the inside salesperson, and then we will turn it over to them. Now they will look at it and they will see, but in the meantime, what we do in our peaks team, we'll get the doc package if it's safety related, any information they need. We'll get the release price, we'll get the contact information. We'll turn that over to Paragon, Texas, and if they can use that, well, then Paragon, Texas will send Peaks a packing slip and a purchase order, and our Peaks team will arrange the logistics to purchase the material, and then the logistics to send it to Paragon, Texas. Meanwhile, the customer is all taken care of without having to do anything. It's
right. That process is transparent to them, right?
It's all Paragon taking care of everything. Paragon, Texas, Paragon Peaks taking care of everything.
And in that case, they receive the parts through our CFC process. They're taking it under our QA program. If Part 21 responsibility is required, we provide that Part 21 traceability. It goes through the whole gambit of our NQA1 Appendix B process.
Without the customer having to worry about anything. There's
great.
Just transparent. Everything's handled in Zendesk, which is an amazing tool. So they see everything that's going on, and it's amazing.
Well, those are great examples, Kevin, and we're excited always to talk with you and to have all the Peaks team members and their enthusiasm helping our customers. So it's great to be able to talk with you. I think I'm going to reshare my screen, and then we'll start the Q&A session. So let me just share my screen again. You guys make sure you can see that. So Matt, does that look pretty good to us? Okay.
It does. Yep, we can see it.
So let's look at some of the questions we've got. So I've got one here, and you can also use the chat, I think, Matt, is that right? Let me turn off my.
Yeah, we had a few things in the chat, no questions yet, but one did pop up just now in the Q&A. So
okay.
So the question is basically, have you heard of the readily available parts information directory, RAPID? And if so, how does Peaks differ from RAPID? So
yeah, that's a great question. We have heard about it. In fact, you see it actually a RAPID catalog screenshot here for an RFQ. So really, the program Peaks and the process of Peaks started with the RAPID database. They're an important partner for us. They've been great to work with, and we represent about 85% of the parts in RAPID. So when you go into the RAPID database and search for a part, If that part is available from one of the utilities that we represent, their inventory, you will see Kevin O'Kane's name and contact information on that part that you can request. And I was joking with Kevin earlier today, in fact, because he's one of the most famous people in the nuclear industry, since his name is on 8 million records there in the Rapid catalog. So to the extent that anyone is famous in our industry, I think Kevin must certainly be in the top 10. So yeah, we are familiar with it. They're a really important partner for us, and we encourage people to use them. We also have our own website that provides that information as far as parts availability. And what's unique about our website and the Peaks platform is that you don't have to log in to see those. So we scrub out all of the utility specific information. We provide very generic information about what parts are available. And you can access that, and anyone can access it at www.paragones.com, which we show there at the bottom of the screen. So we welcome any other questions that come out of the audience. So feel free to ask those at any time. Matt, anything that we didn't cover that you think we probably should cover?
Well, I think you guys did a fantastic job, really, of covering, issues everybody's seeing, and how we're trying to mitigate those issues. And as you and Kevin have pointed out, I see a lot of the big OEMs are coming to us now, trying to source parts through us. Anything from small, small nuts and bolts. I mean, to very large items. I've seen even, transformers come across. I mean, obviously you can see, Kevin, I know you've been working on a transformer for the last few months because the lead times, trying to build those components are so long. And when anybody's got issues, man, they're reaching out for everything. So, there's no commonality of what parts come over. It's really anything big and small. So, I think you guys did a fantastic job. And yeah, still waiting on any questions here if anybody.
Yeah, I think for the OEM support, we've had a few that we've always done every year. I mean, and by a few I mean less than 5, probably 1 or 2 on average a year. But this year and particularly this outage season, we've seen a significant increase in those requests, and that really is indicative of how disruptive these supply chain issues are. And quite frankly, we hadn't thought that much about using Peaks to support OEMs. It kind of been like a kind of a last resort type situation. Today, it seems people are much more open to diversifying their supply chain and looking at alternative solutions, and Peaks provides that in a unique way. Looks like we just got another question in. So they asked, is there any cost to use Peaks? So the answer to that question is there is no cost to use Peaks. You can access the catalog on our website, and there's no login required. It's paragones.com. You can call us and email us. We don't charge you to go help you find parts. We provide a quote to you, and then we're compensated once you buy parts. So the only time we realize any money is in the actual transaction and in the buying and selling of parts from utilities to utilities, or from sourcing those parts from other places. So there is no cost for Peaks. You can always ask us to look for parts for you, and we provide a lot of contingency planning to our customers. So maybe you just want to know if something's available to you and how much that would be. Don't hesitate to ask us. We do that every day for folks across the world. We can provide you, quote, lead times, help you understand, the logistics of it, and that way you have, some knowledge that part's going to be available to you if you need it within 24 hours. Maybe you don't need it today, but if there's another disruption to your supply chain, you might need it tomorrow. So you have the information that you need to make that decision quickly.
I'll probably note one other item, Ty, on the alternative sourcing sector, we've got a lot of, surplus warehousing partners that we've been utilizing a lot. I mean, I'm sure Kevin can speak to that.
Sure.
We've been really, leaning on them for a lot of help for parts that, the utilities don't have in stock because they can't find anymore. But, maybe those through inventory reduction, plant selling off some old inventory. A lot of our surplus warehousing partners, still have that equipment that we're trying to keep in the industry.
We've spent many hours, and there's no problem with this, looking for parts for people, and they say, okay, well, I just wanted to make sure I could get it, like, Matt and Ty had said. That's okay. Contingency is fine. That's what we do. If you can't find something, ask us. That's okay. There's no charge for us looking for material. We have a lot of alternative sources, like Matt just said, that we can find.
Yep. Important. Well, I don't see any other questions in the chat. We're coming up to about 40-minute mark, and we want to keep this relatively short for everybody, since I know many of you have difficult jobs there at nuclear power plants and nuclear facilities these days. So feel free to reach out to us anytime you need some help. You can see our phone number here, the emergent email address, chat, catalog, rapid catalog, a lot of different ways to touch us. And again, it's 24/7. So as Kevin O'Kane talked about, he was on the phone with our customer last Saturday night. We're working every day of the week. We're running a separate back shift during outage season to make sure we've got good support in the evening hours. And we're working all those holidays. So you won't find a time when you're unable to get a hold of us to get started on finding some of these parts. So we really appreciate your time today and appreciate your participation. We are going to make this available on our YouTube channel. We'll send that link out. I know there were some questions about that in the chat. How do we get access to it? So it'll be a publicly available video on our YouTube page, and you can share with your colleagues or go back and rewatch it and make notes. And we welcome you to do that. Again, from Kevin and myself and Matt, thank you so much for joining us, and we look forward to supporting you as we complete this fall outage season, and then throughout the rest of the pandemic. So thanks again, and we'll talk with all of you soon.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.